Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, I am honored to welcome a remarkable man and friend, Travis Partington, Marine Corps veteran, Hawk missile operator, and the host of Oscar Mike Radio. Welcome, Travis. How are you?
Lance, I'm doing great. Good to be here.
Yes, long time coming for our viewers and listeners who, I know a couple that are familiar with you, but those who are not familiar with you, you are the host of Oscar Mike Radio, but you and I had the pleasure of meeting each other at the 10th Annual Elizabeth Dole National Foundation convening in Washington, D.C. this summer. And I'll never forget it when they put us off to those breakout rooms to do those one-on-one interviews. My video guy came up to me. He's like, man, that guy, his voice, he's like made for this. And, and it's true. You have an amazing voice. I know you probably hear that all the time. And, it's a pleasure to have you here, Travis. I wanted to find a way that we could work together because you do so much work. And so much to me is even an understatement to supporting veterans and their family members. And, I know Oscar Mike Radio is now in its 9th year, and right from the literature, it's home for veterans to share, heal, and support one another, fostering connection and community. And, we love that. And we just had a gentleman on who just started the PTSD Foundation, and, they're doing tremendous work. We had him on the show, and anytime we can support our veterans and our servicemen and women, we're going to be the first in line. And thank you for taking the time out to be with us today, Travis.
Well, Lance, thank you for having me. It was a great experience at the Elizabeth Dole convening, and it was great meeting you. And I really appreciate the fact that, you're not a true military VSO, NGO, or supporting organization, but you serve veterans through the work that you all do. And to see you there really underscored the importance of being there. We both had to travel a little bit of ways to get there, but when we were there, we got to see the people that organization impacted. And then, by meeting you, I was able to get an appreciation for what you all did, how you did it. We were both mobile that day, no trailer, no Suburban to pull our stuff in. We were just hauling it from place to place in our SKB cases. So it was a really good time to meet another kindred spirit, if you will, in that environment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I had said to one of the ladies at the convening, I said I don't have a lot of regrets. I don't like regrets. My grandma always taught me when I was young, because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents because they lived down south. Regrets are one of the worst things to have because you can't always go back and fix it. So try to live without having regret, which means make good decisions, ultimately, is what the message was. But I told her at the convening, I said, one of my biggest regrets is that I did not serve. And she said, but don't look at it as a regret, because you are serving by doing the work you're doing, by being here, and, the work you guys do to support veterans. Because my father was a Marine. Multiple uncles were in Vietnam and served Navy, Air Force, Army. And my oldest uncle on my dad's side, he actually was in Patton's division in World War II, and he was considerably older than my dad. And, I just have a great affinity for, anybody that served. Even if it's just you do your 4 and you're out, you still serve because you made yourself available, whether you saw wartime or not. And, and through our company, we serve a lot of veterans too. And, I just think it's an admiration that I think we need to instill in everybody in this country, just me personally. And that's not a political statement. I think it shouldn't matter whether it's political or not. When you serve, you're not serving under a certain political party. You're serving under your country's flag. And we're all Americans at the end of the day. So, that's all I'll say about that. But it's such a pleasure to have you here, Travis.
It is a pleasure to be here in the regards that, wow, this is how this whole, creator culture works if it's done right.
Yeah.
You know, we are in very different lanes sometimes, if you will. We are in very different places in our, creation journey, but we figured out how to take that and, tell those stories, add value to the people that we're talking about or the organizations like the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, and then surprise, surprise, support each other and have a good time doing it. And I think that's missed a whole lot. Some people want to get into their silo, their lane, their little sandbox, and if you don't, have all the toys for that sandbox, you're not going to be coming in. And I'm like, if you did it right, we could all make one big sandbox and have, build even bigger sandcastles. So that's my way of saying that, this is exciting when it works like this.
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to, we had connected after the convening, and we were trying to find ways to work and collaborate together. And there is crossover, just like at the convening showed. It's public sector, private sector, nonprofit. All of it can converge into one pinpoint of mission, and it's to support not only veterans but those caring for veterans, which are caregivers. And I know. So I started off by introducing you as a Marine Corps veteran, and you were a Hawk missile operator. Why don't you just share a little bit about, what made you join the Marine Corps and what that taught you and how it kind of helped shape who you are to this day?
Sure. I was like a lot of people, during that age. I had gotten out of high school and kind of bounced around. College was something that I thought was, too hard, wasn't really interested in doing it, didn't want to sit in a classroom. But also life was teaching me that, hey, without education or something like that, your options are really limited. That's just the facts, unless you just walk into a boatload of money. And I wanted to do something that really changed my life. I knew somehow at that time in my life at a young age that I needed to completely separate from where I was and do something different to kind of see how I could do. And I thought about the military, and it's kind of ironic, where I joined from. My parents moved us to the Shreveport, Bossier area when I was about 14 years old from Illinois. And I'm like, that area is an Air Force town, Strategic 8th Air Command, the whole 9 yards, would go to the air shows. And I'm like, I know the Air Force and what it is, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it like full on. I'm going to do the Marine Corps. And because I thought all the services were the same pretty much, right? They're all like the Air Force Base in Bossier City. And surprise, surprise, I'm like, no, it was not the same. But, I go through boot camp, I go through Marine combat training after boot camp, and then I go to Hawk School. And I think I'm like, wow, I'm doing this stuff that very few people in America, much less the planet, are doing. And I'm getting through it. And so what started was this mindset that if you really put your mind to something and you really commit and you want to do it at a high level and you're willing to do the work, you can achieve your goals and turn your dreams into reality. And you can navigate challenges, you can navigate difficulties that most people would stop at. But because I had a lot of experience in, resilience training, as I like to call it, I was able to get through that. And that small space in my life has paid dividends still to this day.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many years were you in, Travis?
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
4 years. Yep. Yep.
What years were they, if you mind me asking?
95 to 98 and a half. The thing was, I get to Hawk School, and Hawk is one of those MOSs that they deprecated. It was replaced by the Army's Patriots. So we all went through Hawk School. And then about 2/3 of my tour, they're like, hey, pack up the gear. We're done with it. And sure enough, we packed it up. And then ironically, like 20 years later, well, I think like 2 years ago, Raytheon reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to go work in Las Cruces, New Mexico at our facility there, getting the Hawk gear ready to go to Ukraine? Wow. And I said, sure, I'm in. I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm in. And the problem was I didn't maintain my top secret security clearance. I'm like, well, I didn't have a reason to. I mean, you guys were done with me. Right. What's going on here? And I said, most of Hawk is declassified anyway. I mean, what's the big deal? So that was a little funny story, but it really kind of brought home what we did when we watched the Ukrainians take our equipment. And a lot of that equipment they're using over there is still from the stuff that we used out in Arizona, and defend their country, take down ballistic missiles and enemy aircraft with the same stuff that we use, using the same principles that we use. That was a real surreal but proud moment for me.
Yeah, no, it should be. Just out of curiosity, and you said it didn't make sense. There was no reason or purpose to maintain your top security clearance. Once you let it lapse, so to speak, and you've been out of it, like in that situation, could you have reobtained it, or how does that work?
So what I was told is and it was the U.S. Army, if the U.S. Army really wanted me to get into that billet, they would have had to sponsor me, go through the whole process, through the whole way, sign off on it, support it for me to get my clearance back, or have me come in without a clearance and then get it while I was there. And the thing is with Hawk is it is used in other parts of the world still to this day. So they had other people they could draw on to do that function. And that's what they did. No hard feelings, but still, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn one day and I get the message saying, hey, we're Raytheon. We noticed that you did Hawk, and sent them all my stuff. They're like, yeah, it was really just a really cool time.
That is cool. Very cool. It's still, a service to your country now, Travis. So you get out of the Marine Corps, and then you started a career, I'm assuming. What did you get into?
So I got out of the Marine Corps. I rode my motorcycle from Yuma to Boston, and got to Boston, and found out, like a lot of people in the military find out, that there's not a big market for radar and missile operators in the civilian sector. But I had a technical background, and it was extremely frustrating. I'm like, well, I literally took a laptop and hooked it up to this gear to program it in 110 to 120 degree heat in the desert. And you're telling me I don't have enough technical expertise to work on some coworker's PC in the fifth floor? Yeah, it's just you don't have the piece of paper that says you're really technical. And it was very concerning, because I'm like, okay, if I don't figure out some school to get to while I'm trying to make money to support myself and my then new family, I'm in trouble. What am I going to do? And that was a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of faith. I was fortunate that this state has ways for veterans to get trained and get help. And I tell the story. There was every town in Massachusetts has what they call a Veterans Service Officer. And that officer is to help veterans like myself, integrate into the community and get, benefits and services if needed. And mine was education. And sure enough, this Master Sergeant from the Army, Col Antonio, God rest his soul, got me pointed in the right direction and told me where to be and how to be there. And I went to a 6-month computer school that was put on by, then it was called the New England Shelter and Home for Veterans. And I got a piece of paper that said I could, work on computers, something that I had done for the last 10 years of my life. But I had an official piece of paper, Lance, that said I could do it. And it's really amazing. Once I got the piece of paper, life changed. And, I got my first job, and then I got another job. And then, and my current employer I've been with for almost 25 years.
Wow, that's incredible. So at what point did you take your love for computers and, all this work you've done, and for your service in the military and for veterans, and say, you know what, I need to talk about this and start a podcast?
So in 2011 to 2014 were really dark years in my life personally, really dark years. And I was really struggling to understand how life worked and what life meant. And during that time, I had joined the Marine Corps League just as a way to, get myself out of my apartment and connect with other people. And these were all Korean War and Vietnam era veteran, Marines. And they're really cool guys. I still, with them today. I'm a lifetime member of the Marine Corps League. And, we do this thing where if someone passes away who's a veteran and they make a plea to our league, we will come do the Marine Corps League ritual, burial ritual. And all of a sudden, we got a lot of them. We were doing them every weekend. And I'm like, what's going on? And we learned that a lot of these, veterans coming back from, Iraq and Afghanistan at the time were committing suicide. And I had guys tell me how they felt hopeless. And I didn't serve in combat. I wasn't in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I certainly understood what hopelessness was like. I knew where the abyss was. I stepped close to it a couple times, but I would never say I was suicidal, but I definitely knew where the abyss was. But I held on to hope somehow. So I'm like, I don't know much, but I'm going to try to do something. And at the time, I was doing guest hosting at WVBF, an AM station in Taunton, Massachusetts. They would have me come down when there was a veteran event or military guest or, some kind of nonprofit doing something, and I would talk with them. And I really liked it. In fact, my first part-time job in my life was answering phones for 98 Rocks in Shreveport, Louisiana. And so I liked the radio. I liked the whole idea of it. I thought it was pretty cool that, you're in your car and there's some person talking on the radio, and people like that. People respond to that. This little box producing the sound and everything. And I thought about doing it, and, I found out, okay, airtime is expensive. It was $500 an hour, and they wanted, 2 months, paid up front, and whatever you got for sponsors, if you got any, that was your business. So that was kind of a non-starter right there. But then this aspect of podcasting came up. I'm like, I could do that. I could sit in a room somewhere with a microphone and my, PC or whatever and record. And I just wanted a way to, offer some kind of hope or a place where, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm looking for X service, and here's why a person that doesn't. And so I created Oscar Mike Radio. Oscar Mike is military speak for, hey, we're Oscar Mike. We're on the move. We're on mission. And the idea is this radio, even though it's a podcast, I know, but it's on the move. It's on mission, for our veterans, for people who are serving now, and people like yourself who may not have served. You might have never cleaned an M16 your entire life, or, wouldn't know how to dress there, Lance, but what? You understand that you love this country and you love the people that support them and you want to help them out. So that's what this show was for. And I started off, and I would say the first 100 shows were really sus, as my kids say. Some of them were good, some of them really bad, but I stuck with it.
That's incredible. I want to, before we go on, Travis, and I just want to dive in because, I can totally relate to, you saying those first 100 episodes or so were sus. For me, it was like the first 40 or so. And I tell people we never took them down, but I wish I had. But you just can't do that because that's kind of cheating the system. But I can relate to that. You've been around for 9 years, right? Is that? Yeah. And we've been around about 5.5. Do you have a number one most memorable guest or moment in those 9 years? How many episodes do you have first? Let's start there.
Well, curated 468, but it's approaching, like with specials and other things, a 600.
Okay.
600.
All right.
I've been asked that before, Lance, and I don't have a favorite. And I don't have a favorite because I believe that everybody has value, right? So if you as a guest have taken the time out of your day to talk with me and share openly, and one person gets something out of that and it changes their life, that's my favorite. That's my favorite. Now, that being said, I like talking to people who aren't the prototypical veteran to talk to. What I mean by that, it's easy to talk to the Special Forces person, the Navy SEAL, or the popular, in military, and I loathe this term, influencer out there, right? It's easy to talk to one of those person. I want to talk to the person who maybe was a dental technician. I want to talk to the person who was a supply person, motor T, did intelligence, repaired drones. Those people who don't necessarily get the limelight, get a spotlight shined on their service. And the reason I really enjoy talking with them, because I want to dig into what they were doing and why they were doing it, and help people understand that, hey, yes, we have our infantry people out there, the Rangers, the Marines, the SEALs, and much respect to them all. But they can't do their job if there's not all these people behind them supporting them. So I really like talking about those kinds of stories.
Yeah. And, your answer for guests, that would have been pretty much my answer too. I said, I have 3 kids, and that's like asking me who's my favorite. Whichever one's in the room at the moment's my favorite. It's a running joke. But
you're your father, right, Lance? There's some times where none of them are your favorite.
Yes. Oh, believe me. Yeah, especially when it's bedtime and they're not going to bed. But for me, Travis, and I absolutely agree with what you're saying. You as well as I, at the convening, I interviewed the Medal of Honor recipient, Leroy Petrie, an amazing man. Both of the senators that were there, but then I've interviewed governors on the show and all these incredible people that have just done incredible things. But for me, and this is a personal reason, it's not because of accolades or achievements. We had a woman, Travis, early on, maybe year 1, year 2 of our show, and she sent our team an email and wanted to know if she could be a guest because she wanted to share a story that she had never shared publicly. And that story to this day still resonates with me, and I talk about it obviously like now all the time. She was a mother, had a child born with what's called Williams syndrome, and she's just in a little community in Australia, and I mean little. And she raised him for 18 years. No one in the community ever told him he had this, condition, and she never told him either. And, as a parent, like you said, I'm a father like yourself. As a parent, I'm thinking, would I have told one of my kids? And as a son of parents, would I have wanted my parents to tell me? And that is a very difficult answer, and I still don't have one that satisfies me. But my point is, she said, I've listened to all of your episodes, and you just seem kind, and you have a good spirit, all these things. She doesn't know me from anyone. And she said, for whatever reason, I want to publicly share this for the first time on your show. And that to me was more just a personal, just, meaningful moment for me. So that one has always stood out. So that, yeah, I didn't know if maybe you had anything like that for you just really touched you more personally than just like, oh, look at my guest who I have, that kind of thing.
If I may, I would say what really touches me is when I get the children, like I had on the daughter of a Medal of Honor recipient, Ben, I can't remember his name, it just escaped me. Sorry. But I had his daughter on, and to hear his daughter talk about his service and what that meant to their family is great. When I have a parent who's lost a child due to PTSD or something else, that really makes all this, and I'm sure for you too, it gets real quick. Like, we're not doing this for social media likes or as a hobby. That person's being extremely vulnerable and trusting us with this emotions that they're going through at that time.
Yeah, I think you said exactly what I was trying to convey, but I think you did it a lot better. It's really the ones that are meaningful and can have a profound impact on people directly. Kind of like you were saying with the people doing the supply chain, the dental techs, the people behind the scenes that make everything else in the front of the scenes possible. No, I fully agree. And that's kind of how I wanted to look at this interview with you today. One, just from serving, I've told you a million times, thank you for your service and, great admiration that you're continuing your service by doing Oscar Mike Radio. What do you recommend for people listening? Because we have a lot of veterans that listen to the show because they're dealing with PTSD or they have a health condition and it's not even necessarily service related. It's just what happens with age sometimes. But for those that are dealing with those issues, where do you recommend they go to seek help? Obviously the VA, but are there organizations that you're going to be probably more intimately familiar with than what I am for people dealing with some of these more critical issues?
So I don't know about specific organizations. I mean, there's tons of them out there that either address PTSD, can help you with PTSD. There's too many to mention. What I say to people when I get asked that question is the first thing we got to look at is the aspect of loneliness. There is research from Columbia University and the VA where human loneliness, not just being alone, but loneliness is the true precursor to a PTSD state or ideations, where that individual feels cut off from the human experience, cut off from human support, cut off from human validation. And once that really sets in, it's like, well, what am I doing here? If I were to die right now, no one would miss me. No one cares. So the first thing I want people to do who are in that state, and maybe I just did it organically, is like when I joined the Marine Corps League, I knew that it was, one Wednesday a month I had to go and sit there and talk to, these guys who are my dad's age about their experiences. But it started, then I had to show up for motorcycle rides and other things, right? That started this change where I had to be somewhere and be around people and was appreciated for being there. So being around people, volunteering if you can, going to an American Legion meeting, going to a veterans coffee hour, telling your story somewhere else. And that to me is the first thing. Then we got to get you into being seen by professionals, right? Because I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional psychiatrist, psychologist. Let's get you seen by somebody and see if you'll meet the qualifications and requirements to get VA care. And let's get you taken care of. I mean, so many of us veterans, Lance, suffer in silence. And, I was guilty of that for a while where I'm like, I'm not going to do that because, I'm good. And I wasn't good. And, in a lot of ways that changed everything. So to me, it's finding a group of people or groups of people that you can be around. One thing I'll say is they got video game groups for veterans. They have hunting, fishing, whatever you want to do that you're interested in. There's somebody out there that offers it or wants to offer it to you. And there's no judgment. Just show up, be yourself, be amenable to being around people, and let the change happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know one of the vendors, and I don't know if you saw them there, Travis, out in the foyer at the convening. He was one of the executive, administrators for the VA's Family Caregiver Support Resource Center. Did you happen to catch him by any chance?
I can't remember them all. It was such a blur. But I'm sorry, I can't remember all of them. I remember the Military Officers Association table, and that was it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, this gentleman, he was there on behalf of the VA specifically, their caregiver support resource. And for me, what gets frustrating is families don't know what they don't know. Veterans don't know what they don't know, and I'm very fond of saying, I didn't know I was even a caregiver. My father, as I shared with you, he was in the Marine Corps in the 60s, and I'm sure you're very well versed on the history of the Marine Corps. It was a whole different world then than probably when you were in the mid to late 90s. And when he ended up coming to stay with my wife and I, which changed the entire trajectory of my life, I was doing medical school or the medical school route. And we got a call and the nurse said, hey, we have your father here. He's either going to have to go into rehab for a couple of weeks or he could come stay with you. Because my father, very, very, proud man, worked on the railroad, a guy's guy. He had slipped and fallen on some ice, landed on his coccyx, his tailbone, and got up and continued on. Right. And that fall led to a very traumatic bruise in that area. Well, just like you and I are both sitting on that area right now. Right. And you do that 75% of your day eating, everything. And so that bruise never had the chance or the ability to properly heal. So he's driving his car one day. All of a sudden, that bruise had developed into an abscess. Well, the abscess burst. So he just goes to his local family doctor and he said, I have no idea why you're here, but you need to get to the emergency room like now, because now all that infection goes into your bloodstream. And so he had a surgery to clean it out, and so forth. And he just wasn't able, nor could you or I, properly clean it and maintain it and bandage it by ourselves. So he was going to come stay with us for a couple of weeks. That ended up being 2.5 years. But Travis, never once during that 2.5 years did anyone ever say to my wife or I or my father, here's some resources. Here's a local this. Here's a local that. Have you looked into this? And, because like you mentioned earlier, everybody stays in their own lane, in their own little silo. So you're not getting the information that you need so that you can, continue forward equipped as well as you can be. And so I discovered, hey, there's got to be other people out there like us that need help. So now I'm a caregiver, and my father's not getting better. He ended up passing because, 2.5 years he had to go into a nursing home, which was the last thing we wanted. But because of the infection, he had part of his tailbone cut off. I mean, it was very grotesque and very graphic. And I said, there's got to be other people we can help like us, because, here we are in our early 20s, and I'm sure there's people with parents in their 60s, 70s, 80s, or whatever. I'm like, we got to do something. So I stopped that pursuit, and then we started our home care company many, many years ago. And, here we are now. And when COVID hit, that's when we started our podcast, because I said, how can we continue helping these families and people? And, here we are now. But, I just think, when you are in service of others, I think it's very healing and it's very helpful. But like, my children go to a private Christian school here in our community, just an amazing school. And last week they had a half a day on half a day on Thursday, and then they're off Friday, parent-teacher conferences. I say all that to say, last week was Veterans Day. And so what they do on that Thursday every year, because of conferences, when they have the half a day, all the families in the school, friends, neighbors, whoever it is, they want you to have that veteran come to the school, and they do a huge, they call it chapel, and the veterans all line up. They march down depending on what branch you're in. They play your branch's music. Very moving, very powerful. They have the kids holding all the flags. I mean, I get goosebumps even just telling you about it now. But, it's showing these kids to have that honor and respect and appreciation for these men and women who have served. And, like in our country, it's a choice. It's not mandatory. And so these people like yourself and my father, you did it voluntarily by your own choosing. No one made you, and you didn't have to, but you wanted to. And, here you are all these years later, still serving in this capacity. And I think the community in our country is better for it. And I don't mean to overstate it. I really do. I mean, you're reaching people in DC with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. You have Oscar Mike Radio. And I know, you go around to different, seeing you on social media, different events in the communities for veterans. But one fun fact I don't think people realize about you, and I'm interested to hear about this, but you crochet.
I do.
Yes. Tell me about that. How did you get involved with that?
So this is going to be a blanket, and I'm going to donate it to Master Rolling Thunder Chapter 2, and I crochet.
That's incredible. How did you ever get started in that?
Well, so, hold up here. I was doing Oscar Mike Radio first year, September. I started in July, and this woman from Georgia is like, hey, I need yarn so I can make blankets for veterans.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about yarn. I didn't know anything about crochet, but she needed help, and she made these blankets. So I started asking around, and this Project Linus group at my work had these yarn scraps, which were perfect. And they're like, typical New England women are like, yeah, we'll give you the yarn. We'll give you the yarn, no problem. You have to learn how to crochet. Translation, we're going to laugh at you first. Have some fun at your expense, and then we'll help you out. Nothing's free here, Lance. New England women do not operate for free. So I'm like, okay, I'll be a good sport. I'll try it out. And then I got started, and look at these mitts, Lance. I mean, they're not exactly like dainty is not the word I would use, right? But I'm like, I'm not going to let a piece of metal and some string beat me. I'm a Marine, for Christ's sake. I'm going to get this right. And I just never quit. And then about 6 months into it, it started clicking. I started being able to do this, and I've never stopped. I don't know why I do it. I have no idea why I keep doing it. I think there is some satisfaction when one of my blankets goes to a fundraiser and helps raise money for somebody. But I never quit. I don't know why I do it.
And we're not talking baby blankets either. I mean, some of these blankets, I know there's one picture I saw recently. You're literally standing up arms fully extended, and that thing is completely draped over your back, and it's beautiful too. I mean, it's not,
thank you.
you're doing patterns and colors, and if I was going to have any more kids, I would reach out to you to make a baby blanket for me, but we're done in that department. But it's just incredible, Travis. You're doing such amazing work. As we leave our viewers and listeners, I know, and again, I respect there's a lot of organizations, and, I don't want to have you give medical advice because neither one of us are doctors or psychiatrists or psychologists. But if a veteran's family was in need of support, let's say they're caring for the veteran, I know there's aid and attendance that's out there, which again, aid and attendance, are you familiar?
No.
Yeah. My only frustration with that is you have to be a wartime veteran to qualify, or the spouse, but then after that you have to qualify financially. I pray and wish that someday that would just be a free resource for all veterans, no financial qualifications. I feel like that's a payback, kind of like throw it into the next GI Bill and just, make that another pension, because that's how it's viewed, as a pension. But where do you know of any other types of resources or support that they can get for that family that's caring for a veteran, as far as respite or anything like that?
So that there's hundreds of organizations, and it depends upon locale. Like, for instance, Florida has a lot of geriatric services for veterans. Some of them are paid, some of them are nonprofit, some of them are a hybrid, a combination of both. And this is not, I'm not just blowing this up, but the one that I have really come to respect and know over time is Elizabeth Dole Foundation, because there isn't the qualification for service. They have the support group. This is the thing that where they differ from a lot of other organizations is, and nothing against these other organizations that serve in this capacity, but the Elizabeth Dole has the cadre of other, caregivers who've gone through their program that can help you out. So you are not alone. You have the support from the organization as a whole, but also from other people in your area or even across the nation that can help you out. And that's the one thing that I have really come to admire, is some of these caregivers, in their own struggle and challenges dealing with their loved one, still find time to help somebody else, across the nation or right next door. That cannot be overstated. So there's a bunch of them. High level, you shouldn't have to pay to have an organization help you. There are plenty of nonprofits that are there and raise money to help the veteran. So that is to say, I don't want you giving away part of your family member's VA disability or pension to receive aid. Right. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. You should reach out to, your local VFW or American Legion and vet that organization before you do work with them. And then, the VA too has their list of other service providers that can help in that space. And the reason I guide people there is if they've been accredited by the VA, then you're getting a standard of care, a level of expertise, and the fee scheduling. If that applies, a lot of times it does not, but if it does, that you're getting the best outcome for your money.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I couldn't agree more about the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. And what I think is even extra special, and you kind of mentioned it about having the daughter of the Medal of Honor recipient on, they have their Hidden Heroes program, which, children often are an afterthought and don't get even thought about at all, if even as an afterthought, as caring for a parent, of a veteran serviceman or woman. And they just do tremendous work. And I encourage everybody, and I know you do as well, you need to go attend next year's convening, because the resources and the information is just, it's endless. And it's really, like you said, it's such a cadre. They have something for everyone. Some people that we had invited who are in the, the care space attended the convening, and we didn't, and I don't believe you did either, because we were covering it. They went to all of their mini workshops, and they're teaching you about micro jobs and, working from home and still having some income come in, because oftentimes you're not able to work because you're there caring for a loved one. So yeah, I hope everybody will check it out next year, or just go to the Elizabeth Dole Foundation website. So Travis, final thing, where would you like people to go to listen to Oscar Mike Radio and to connect with you?
My website's the easiest place as a staging point. It's Oscar Mike Radio, all one string.com. You'll hear my recent shows. You can connect with me over social media. You can drop me an email, and I'll get right back to you. But that's the place.
Great. And we'll have that up on the screen as well. And do you want to just read off your email address for those that may not be watching and they're listening instead?
Sure. My email address is Travis, Travis, at OscarMikeRadio.com.
Perfect. Well, Travis Partington, Hawk missile operator, Marine Corps veteran, and the host of Oscar Mike Radio, and a good friend and a good person. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Travis.
Lance, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Travis Partington for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.